What is going on, everyone? In this episode, I am going to be going over my backstory and sharing with you not all of the rainbows and butterflies of the goodness that has happened over the career that I've been an entrepreneur. I'm going to share with you multiple stories of where I was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, stories of losing six figures on real estate deals, partnerships gone sideways, losing millions of dollars in that. So I would say this episode is for you. One, here are the backstory of a 14-year entrepreneur that has built an 8-figure net worth as a business owner of multiple different types of companies. But my goal is to show you also in this episode, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, in that there is a lot of challenge. And through this, I want to give you those lessons that, have allowed me to be successful now to this point from the things that I've went through. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and dive right in. So if you're watching the video version of this, you'll be seeing me looking over at my notes. I had to write this out to get my thoughts organized, so let's do it. So starting off, I started my entrepreneurial journey 14 years ago as of the time of this recording. I was 17 years old. And, oftentimes people will say, oh, Cody, well, it must have been easy for you. Or for some reason, people think that my entrepreneurial journey became easy I don't know why, just because I've achieved a level of financial success now, but it has not been easy. It has been very painful. To that point, my last job that I ever worked was at McDonald's in high school, and I left that to get into the network marketing industry. Was my first venture into business. And so when I was 17, I got into reading all of the, Robert Kiyosaki's books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, all of those. Then I went into Zig Ziglar, collection of CDs that my parents had in their office. And I got hooked on this entrepreneur thing. And I just wanted to be successful so bad. And so I got into network marketing at 17 and, had really tons of trials and lessons through that, really learned how to build teams. And, really my biggest lesson during that time was to work harder on myself than I did on my actual business. That my own personal development journey really began, I would say, at that point. And so from 17 to 21, did network marketing, created good success with it. In the company that I was in, I built a sales team of a couple thousand people across the world. We were generating the company close to $5 million a year in revenue at the peak of the time that I was in that company. And so, I was making six figures as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old. And so thought life was great. Like there was nothing to complain about. And so until I turned 21. And so at 21, this company that I thought I was really just going to work there the rest of my life at the time goes under. Randomly, I stopped getting paid. And this leads me to one of my first lessons is financial literacy. So as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, you would, expect that I perfectly managed my money and put money aside for a rainy day and did all of the things that an adult would do. Spoiler alert, I did not do any of that. Instead, I bought a brand new Jeep. I bought a brand new BMW. I was living in an almost 4,000 square foot house that I rented with a few friends. And I spent all of my money on stupid crap, Gucci bags, Louis Vuitton this, all this stupid designer crap. And so when I stopped getting paid from that company, I only had really a couple months of money set aside for my expenses. And so what ended up happening was I had to pay to break the lease on the place I was living in. I had to sell my cars. I had to sell most of my, material possessions down to my mattress just to pay off getting out of the negative equity in cars, which I learned about that you should not buy new cars, Cody. You should never buy a new car. And for those listening, don't buy new cars. It's stupid. It's one of the fastest ways to get depreciation loss that you could find out there. And so a lesson on that has taken me to, anytime I buy a vehicle today, I'm only buying it if, on some of the exotic cars and stuff I've had, I typically buy like 3 to 7 years old with super low mileage with very high spec. So it's already had a lot of the depreciation, but it's still low mileage enough where it's not having problems and where I can get good enjoyment out of it and be able to sell it for reasonable loss, few percentage points, 3 to 5 percentage points versus massive loss of buying a brand new car. So that was one of the lessons. And I had to, all of that being said, the success that I had there, had to sell all my stuff, move back to my parents' house, which was ego death at 21. And, to the point where, I went home and it was pretty depressing. And so that was, part of my journey. And so what did I do, being a very hungry and ambitious 21-year-old still, but now confused on what the heck to do with my life? I went back to the books and, rereading Robert Kiyosaki's books again, and Rich Dad Poor Dad. He talks about people get rich in real estate. So what does this 21-year-old do? I go get into real estate. I get my real estate license because I didn't know how to wholesale, fix and flip, buy rentals, do any of that stuff. And I thought that would at least be my pathway into the door. And so I spent, the first couple of years in my 20s doing, working as an agent and wholesaling some deals here and there as I started learning that. And I, being a 21, 22, 23-year-old, you don't have a big sphere of influence. So I didn't have tons of friends and family that were, buying and selling homes. And so, I had to just go out and create my business. And so pretty much every day I was cold calling 4 or 5 hours a day, expired listings, for sale by owner, opportunities. And then I would do on the weekends open houses. And I 100% built all of my business just from doing cold calling and open houses. And so I got within that period, selling about 20 houses a year as an agent, got back to making, low 6 figures a year again, and was hating my life. And it was really because I hated being an agent. I didn't like doing listings. I didn't like working with buyers. I didn't want to deal with these people's emotions. And so I had a salesperson on my team, and then I had an assistant, a full-time assistant at that time, and it was one of the most painful days. I literally can remember the room, the smells, the sound, like this musty smell of this office that I was in, and like the sound of the traffic out, and like walking in, and I fired both of them that day because I was quitting this industry. And so, or not the industry, quitting being an agent. I was like, I am going all in on real estate, on the investment side of real estate. So doing wholesaling, fix and flips, rentals, that's what I wanted to do. And so went on that path and was, doing the outbound calls. I was door knocking pre-foreclosures, started getting deals, wholesaling. Then I started hiring a team offshore in the Philippines, and started hiring, cold callers, outbound SMS team members, admin in the Philippines, and that's how I started building out my team. And shameless plug, if you need a team to help you with your administrative tasks in your business, you should hit up my team at startvirtual.com. Or if you need bookkeeping done to make sure your financials are clean every single month and that you have visibility into what's happening in your business, hit us up, startvirtual.com. But with that being said, I began that process. And so got to where I was, closing a couple deals every month, wholesaling them, found a mentor that was in his early 40s that had flipped a ton of houses, owned a bunch of rentals. And we had this, deal basically set where I would go and get good properties under contract. I would bring them to him, and we joint ventured some fix and flips, which allowed me to learn how to fix and flip, which was awesome. And then, at that point, when I was about 24, is when, myself and a partner at the time, that I had partnered with at the time named Pace, we began, working together, because my part in business is I love building teams. I love operations. I love, building the structure behind a company. I love financial strategy, building the company's overall strategic plan to success, and building teams overall. And, the partner, Pace, he loved sales, and he loved, the hunt of deals and all of that. And I didn't like that stuff. So it worked out really well. We were able to, do a lot of deals, over the years. but that was a lot of the adventure that led me to this day. And so let me just fast forward for a second, because I'm 31 at time of this recording. Over the last 4 years at the time of this recording, companies that I've owned, some of these I've now sold, but overall portfolio, in the last 4 years has done over 50 million in revenue. And yeah, lots of pain, lots of suffering, lots of money lost, lots of money made during that time. And so some of the brands you can check out that I'm currently involved in at the time of this recording, and then we'll get into the other losses and some of the lessons learned that you can take and hopefully save yourself hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, depending on where you're at in your journey. We'll get to those. So some brands you could check out. You can go to @theplant_guy on Instagram. I bought half of that business a couple of years ago. You could check out The Perfect Clean on Instagram as well. Residential cleaning company. Bought majority share in that business, but 2 other partners in that. Startvirtual.com. Don't have an Instagram for that. I had mentioned that company before. Obviously, if you're listening to the Scale with Pros podcast, you probably have now heard of Scale with Pros, but scalewithpros.com, where we do consulting for companies that are doing 7 figures and above to help them with their operations and teams. And we also do 2 in-person events a year where we bring people together. We run no ads for it. It's very application focused and making sure it's the right fit for people to be involved in the room. So we're, super protective of that. And another company that, as of time of this recording, I had just purchased, it's called AZ Tax Time. It's a tax and bookkeeping company that I bought to roll into Start Virtual. But as the time being, it's operating as a separate entity as we do integration right now. And yeah, so let's rock and roll. And another big one is at the beginning of last year. You might see from my Instagram and other stuff, I had a company called Manifest You that was doing, in 2023, we did about 25 million at that company, close to 50 full-time employees in Arizona. And it was a media company and fulfillment for online digital products, essentially. And so at the beginning of 2024, I got bought out of my position in that company. And so a lot of reflection has happened over, this last, year and a half, almost 2 years as of the time of this recording as well. And, to really determine like where I wanted to focus my time, attention, the capital that I've built to this point. And so I'm going to share that with you and then get into some of these other learning lessons here. So as of right now, my current focus is to continue to grow and scale the current companies that I own in my current portfolio, and then focusing on helping the team members within those companies continue to be successful, have a great place to work, and have build a long-term career. And the partners that I have in those companies, my goal is for them to be able to achieve their financial dreams through the enterprise value that we build to eventually exit some of these companies as well. In addition to that, I'm continuing to purchase more companies with current focus in the cleaning industry and in the financial services space, tax, bookkeeping, payroll, across the country. And my passion project is what you're listening to right now, which is Scale with Pros, which is really just bringing myself and other professionals that have scaled 7, 8, 9-figure businesses on here and talking about wins, losses, lessons learned, so that we can help you have less of those in your life. And so that's really what Scale with Pros is a passion project. And we get the enjoyment of consulting and working with specific founders. We don't work with a lot. We're not scaling this to some 10, 20 million a year company. We want to make millions a year, small team, very profitable, and serve my portfolio companies. And so I get the joy of having my passion project. Also, have the team that helps serve my other companies, which is where I make my money actually from. So that is where I am at, and it's a good place to be with where we're at Scale with Pros. Is we don't need clients. We take the clients that we want. And so that's a fun place to be with what we're doing with Scale with the Pros now. So let's go into, well, Cody, this all sounds great. And where's all the pain and the things that, went wrong? So the first one, going back to, at 21, when I was financially illiterate, I had to go through and actually learn how to manage my own personal money. So there's a couple recommendations that I would give you when it comes to that. So one, I went through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. And so for those of you that are like, oh my gosh, Dave Ramsey, that was really a great foundation for me because, guys, I had no foundation. I didn't go to college. So just hear me out here. I had to get the basics of like just bucketing your money out, managing it a little bit differently. So some foundations there where I really got great value and into what I've held for over a decade now as far as how I manage my money today is from T. Harv Ecker's book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. He talks about bucketing your money by percentage allocation in that book. I'm not going to go into all of that on this podcast, but I would highly recommend checking out that book if you're trying to get a better handle on strategically managing your personal cash. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. So that was a great learning for me out of that pain. Then moving on, goes back actually to the story of, my mentor's name was Frank. The first fix and flip I ever did was a ton of work on my time. I spent probably 50 plus hours, or not 50 plus hours, 200 plus hours to, hopefully make 50 grand on this deal was like the target. It was what we projected. And at the end of the deal, we ended up making 5,000, really because we had issues with, people breaking into the home and all sorts of nonsense that you just don't learn about until you're in a deal. And then the deal ended up selling for less than we expected and took longer to sell than we expected. And so holding costs were, more expensive. So there was just a whole lot of nonsense that happened on that deal. And, so that was my first fix and flip, guys. I got so rich making $5,000. So that was my first fix and flip, but I was excited as ever and continued on. So here's a fun one. One of the first rentals that I ever bought, I bought using Creative Finance. And the loan, it was a Creative Finance subject to deal. If you don't know what it is, I'm not going to spend 10 minutes going into what a subject to is. Basically, I bought this home and was taking over the payments from the previous owner that was living in the home, and that was in pre-foreclosure and just wanted to get the home gone. And so what had happened on this deal was I went to close to purchase the property. I sent my wire to the title company to close the purchase. They closed the purchase out. Title company then was, during that process, needed to pay off the pre-foreclosure amount so it doesn't go to auction, so that, the auction was stopped. So what ended up happening was I closed. I had my construction crew go in. We fixed up the house over the next, 45 days, spent about 50 grand doing work in the house. I go to now rent list the property for rent. And when I go and look up, the information, like bed, bath, square footage count, all that type of stuff for the rental listing, I notice there's a different name on title of ownership. And so I come to find out the title company forgot to send the wire to actually pay the payment to pay off the pre-foreclosure amount of money. So the property goes to auction. They close the property. I own it. It still goes to auction because of that loan that was on the property that they didn't pay the amount. So now some other investor owns the property. I spent 50 grand fixing this thing up. I use the title insurance that you have on every, title policy. I spend 2 years suing the title company in fight with the other investor and title company, trying to just get my 50 grand back at that point. I got almost my 50 grand back by the end of 2 years of pain and suffering and thousands of dollars of lawyer bills. And also all of my upside in that property was basically gone because I just, got hosed. So that was my first rental property. I kept on buying more. And so that, I think that's just the universe's way of saying, I don't know, Cody, when you start something new, I'm going to kick you in the frickin' mouth. So that's, and I just keep on going. So just keep going when shit happens like that, guys. But that was a fun adventure. Here's another one that you guys can laugh at. So when I was 21, during that time where I'd gotten my real estate license, I was able to buy a house because I still had enough income that showed from the network marketing business that I was in to buy a home and get up on my feet a little bit there, and sold a couple properties, was able to put a down payment down, bought a house. Within a couple of years, I had someone that online was selling these Amazon stores and showing these crazy returns of how much money you could make if you buy these Amazon stores. The home that I was in had appreciated by I don't know, 40, 50,000 bucks. So I had some cash in my house, but I didn't have the cash available to invest in this guy's amazing Amazon store investment. So he convinces me to sell my house. I freaking sold my house, guys. Like, this is embarrassing. I sell my house. I'm like, I'm going to buy these freaking Amazon stores. So I sell it. I give this dude, I don't know, 25, 30 grand so I could do this. All the money's gone. He just takes the money. Like, this totally scams me. I got an Amazon store with some listings in it, and then he never fulfilled on anything. Guy disappeared. His name was Ryan Nichols. So I'll call him out. That's his name. Guy's in prison, I think, for some other reason, but freaking jackwagon. And so very smart thing by this successful guy today. Very smart thing that I did. And so I'm going to go through, I wrote a list of so many. I posted actually on my Instagram story a list of probably 20 different losses that I've had over the last decade in my business career. So you can go to my Instagram at Cody Barton Official, and you can look at the my story on my highlights section on my Instagram and see a lot more of these. But I'm just going to share a couple more of these with you guys, just for some fun here. So another thing, had an opportunity to buy an apartment complex in Whitman, Arizona. And so another first. What is it, guys? Another first. Apartment complex. It's very, dilapidated. I got a good price on it, and I was able to buy this thing subject to. Again, another subject to deal. But it needed close to $100,000 in renovation. So I raised 85 grand from a private money lender, and I get into this deal. And I'm like, man, the numbers are going to freaking crank on this thing by the time we get it done. It was like a 8 or 10 unit apartment complex, very, small spot. And so basically what ends up happening on this deal was I didn't know this was like crackhead central of Whitman where I bought this thing. So location matters, guys. This was a dumb buy. But so my crew goes, they start fixing it up. And then every few days, my crew would basically say that they would get robbed. They'd be doing work, and there'd be these crackheads, homeless people, whatever the heck they were, would be going, and they'd be breaking into their trucks while they're inside the property fixing up stuff. So then they're having issues. And then the next issue started happening where they would then break into the properties, and then they would steal the stuff my guys were doing. So we got like floors put in, and then as soon as we had any plumbing work put in, they'd rip out the plumbing. As soon as we do anything in this freaking property, they would just break in and steal it. So then I was like, okay, well, we could board it up. So board up the property, get the boards up whenever you guys finish the work, and then, we'll keep going. So we did that. Man, these guys were relentless. They would rip open. They would get out there. I don't know what tools they were using, but they would find a way with tools to break open and steal more crap. So then we had the idea, let's put up a fence. I'm like, I'm just gonna get rent a fence. I'm gonna get that company out there. We're gonna fence this bad boy down. So I fenced the whole property, hoping that diverts them. Man, these guys are relentless. They freaking knock down the fence and get in and still break stuff and steal stuff. So like, I burned that $85,000 redoing the same type of work over and over again, and got to the point where I had to give up. And so keep in mind, guys, I raised that 85 grand from an investor. And so that investor didn't know any of this nonsense was happening. They just were getting their payment from me every month. And so what ended up happening was I had to give the property back to the previous seller and basically let them know, I'm like, look, there's we can't perform on the renovations on this property, so we have to give it back to you. Here the property, at least it's with the current payment, so you got to take it back. And that $85,000, I had to get a few other fix and flips done, and I concurrently basically got the funds set aside, and then I deeded the property back to the previous seller, and then I wired the 85 grand back to my investor to make him whole. He didn't even know any of the nonsense I dealt with on that property. All he knew was the title company sent him his money back, and I got the lien released off the property so the seller could get the property back. And I had to flip a few other properties and make profit to this pay off a bad deal. So super fun, exciting stuff. And so super sick there. Another, I have too many bad contractor stories, so we'll leave that. But here's one. During COVID, and this is an interesting one. So during COVID, I had about 20% of my tenants were stopped paying rent, and for everyone that's aware, during that time, you still had to make your mortgage payments on your rentals, but your tenants didn't have to pay you, and they could just say COVID, and they didn't have to pay. And so, and the reason I bought rentals in Arizona was because it's landlord friendly, and you could remove people from your property in a reasonable amount of time if they're not paying their bills. And so that was super fun. So during COVID, I had to, make good chunks of extra cash to support, it's about half a dozen mortgages that weren't getting paid from rents until I could get those tenants either back on track or until, they allowed me to actually finally start evicting them. And so that was gnarly, making multiple mortgage payments on properties with people living in them that should be paying, but they're not, and they're taking advantage of the landlord. So yeah, that was a painful lesson. And so the lesson in that is reserves, keeping adequate reserves. I'm a big fan of, within all of my companies, I like to get up to about 3 months of reserves in each of my companies. I'd be lying if I said all of them are at that right now. We have a couple of them that are well over that, which I'm happy about. And then there's a couple that are not. They're at, a month and a half. And so, it's something that, we consistently work on. But I think, it's important to work on your business's reserves to make sure you have that cash set aside for when inevitable stuff happens. Like, that's not a plannable event. That's a black swan event that hit me. But thankfully, I had reserves, even though it was eating my reserves, and I had to really focus on creating new cash to pay for that. It sucks. So there's that. I'm gonna give you a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up with this episode. And so this is a good one. So I didn't understand how to set up operating agreements for partnerships. And so if you take any lesson from this whole episode, this is the one to take if you're going to have a partnership. So not understanding this, here's the part that screwed me. So I had a buy-sell agreement in one of the operating agreements in the companies that I owned. And so there was a partner that he didn't want to do anything anymore. He just wanted to focus on another business. And so I'm like, okay, well, I want to buy you out then. Because, if you're not going to do anything, I'm not going to just have you be a passive investor. That's not what this deal is. And that's not what we set it up as. And so basically I was like, all right, well, let's go to our buy-sell language in our operating agreement. And essentially in that operating agreement, it just said, the value will be based off of the appraiser's value. And that was the stupidest thing ever. I thought the only way to value a business was by a multiple of the profit of the business. This appraiser was that he had hired, gave all sorts of value to, nonsense. Literally, gave the value of the company of, I think she had said the company was worth I don't know, 600 grand, or not 600, $6 million. And at the time, based on, what our EBITDA was, I'm like, this thing is worth maybe $1.5 million to 2 million. And so, what do you think the partner wanted to be paid out off of? The freaking crazy number. And so, back and forth, fighting through all of this, ended up having to spend about 800 grand to get him out. And at the same time, doing the role and having to help fill in on the role that he wasn't doing in the company while doing my role in the company, while dealing with that over, it probably took about 7-8 months to get all that, put done, finalized. And so, that was a very exciting experience. And so what's the lesson in that? Whenever I put in buy sell terms into an operating agreement now, I am extremely, extremely clear and detailed. Like, there's a lot to go with an operating agreement. Talk with your attorney. This isn't legal advice, so I'm just telling you what happened to me and what I do now. And so how I put in the operating agreement the buy sell now is I put exactly this. I say, of the valuation of the company will be determined by the trailing 12 months EBITDA multiplied by one of these numbers. And it's based off, and they're just tiers of whatever the company's profit was. There's some tiers. So let's say the profit of a company was between 250,000 and 499,000 in EBITDA the trailing 12 months. It's off of this multiple. If it was between 500,000 and $999,000 in trailing 12 months EBITDA, it's multiple of this number. If it's above $1 million EBITDA and below $2 million EBITDA, it's multiplied off of this number. So now it's like extremely clear of EBITDA ranges and what multiple will be paid off of those ranges. And then underneath that, I have in the agreement where I have the terms of how that will be paid out, how much money I will be putting down based off a percentage of that price, what the interest rate will be, what the term of the loan will be, and then if there's any balloon language or anything like that in there, all of that's predetermined. And I have in the agreement that if I'm exercising a right or an option to buy them out, they will be accepting it. This is the terms according to our operating agreement. These are the buyout terms. This is what I will pay, and this is how it will be paid. If I give them a notice within 30 days, we have to close on it, and that is what is happening. And so that is extremely clear in the agreements of how it will be paid, how we'll come up with the value, and when it will be done by. So I don't have to go through that again. Ever again. And so hopefully that helps save you. If you don't have it clear in your operating agreement and you're like, well, me and my partners, we're all in good relationships. Guys, operating agreements should be called disagreements, not operating agreements, because the only freaking time you pull out your operating agreement is really two reasons. One, you're disagreeing on some shit, or two, you got to send it to your banker because they're like, I need to see your operating agreement for your bank accounts and verify who the owners are on this thing. So it's like there's really, you don't use it for that many things. There are some other use cases, but those are really the two biggest reasons that you ever reference your operating agreement. And, please, 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 while you're on good terms with your partners, and I hope everyone listening that has a business partner, you're on good terms forever. Like, I've had many great partnerships that have been amazing forever and don't have issues. I've also had terrible ones. And so I'm just telling you, cross your T's, dot your I's, get this stuff done. Spend a couple grand on an attorney to do this the right way. Don't ChatGPT some BS and save a couple $1,000s to then lose $1 million later. Like, that's just dumb. Like, that's I would call it bad deal. So, just a learning there. And let's go into one of these nastiest ones where having adequate company reserves saved my butt. So this is going to be my final one, and this will, this is a super transparent one post or share here, guys. That was super painful for me. So for everyone that pays attention to the real estate market or the world, interest rates really went up. I think it was 2022 I think 2022, 2023. Forgive me if I'm off on the year. Life's a blur sometimes. But interest rates went up from like 3% to close to 7%, and it seemed like just a few months. And my company, Start Virtual, we were very focused on serving real estate investors with, cold calling services and outbound, just lead management services for fix and flippers specifically. And so we had a ton of our clients, literally more than a third of our business was focused on serving that audience. And so when interest rates made this massive swing within just a few months, what happens to fix and flippers is they stop buying fix and flips because they stop selling, and they stop selling at the numbers that they need them to because buyers aren't buying. So buyers slowed down, buyers stopped buying at the rate that they were. So fix and flippers stopped flipping at the rate they were. A lot of them got out of the business completely. And so due to all of that happening, we lost over a third of our clients at our company Start Virtual within just a few months. So like we went from netting over 100,000, like the trailing like 12 months before that, like we netted $1.5 million in that business, to losing over $100,000 a month. Like not like, oh, like some paper loss of 100,000 somewhere, some fake thing. Like no, like over $100,000 was hemorrhaging out of our company account monthly for multiple months. And during that time, we were trying to, I was trying to do everything I could to try to pivot this thing and to try to get, more of our ideal clients, which were admin clients. And then we had, thank God, the year before we had started our bookkeeping side of the business, which, now today is our biggest part of the business and the most profitable part. But I couldn't grow it fast enough in those areas to fix it. I was trying not to lay people off. And so, after months, we were basically went from a $7 million a year run rate to a $3 million a year run rate by the end of that year. And it was horrible. And I, myself and, my partner Daryl in the Philippines, between US and Philippine staff, we laid off a lot of people. And it was one of the most heartbreaking things. I think every night I would wake up stressed out, so much so that I developed an ulcer, after a few months of just horrendous stress during this, trying to solve it. And so during all of that, I was, depressed, anxious, just felt horrible. I let these people down. I promised all of these big dreams of like what this company is going to be and the career opportunity that these people are going to have, and had to fire a lot of them. Great people, not for lack of their performance, but market shifted. We should have been more diversified in our client base. So, it happens. And so, and just so you guys can laugh, that previous partner, he had a minority in the business, but his minority part of the business was worth still a good chunk of money based on where we were doing and that same partner had to pay out like $800,000. That same partner, that was the last year that I went through those 7-8 months of just pain and suffering of like getting that buyout done. Then we roll into the next year where all of this happens and goes freaking disaster. And so, back to back years of fun excitement. And so I share that, just letting you guys know, hey, it's not easy. Same time I had, other businesses that were doing well and thriving, and I was making great money, but in this one it was horrible. And so, that's just part of the game. And the lesson was, having reserves. We had good reserves in that company. I was extra paranoid about the real estate market because we were so heavy in that, and it really saved our butt. Our based on our burn rate and everything, we had close to 5 months of our operating expenses and cash between, savings and money market accounts. And so thankfully we had that. We burned a lot of it for sure, but it kept us alive, and it was painful. So, I really made this episode. I know I talked about a lot of different things. And if you, again, want to see the full story of, I literally am looking at a notepad on my phone or my computer on the side here where I put the notes in. And I'd posted this on my Instagram highlights under my story section, Cody Barton Official. You can check out more. I literally have a lot more of these losses. I just didn't want to make this a 2-hour podcast of, just shit that went sideways in business. But I share this episode to encourage you and let you know, if you're going through it right now, it'll get better. And you just have to, the only way to get through it is to go through it sometimes. Like that's really the only way to solve for where you're at, is just going through the situation. And so, it's lots of losses on the ways to wins. If you're losing, you're getting yourself closer to winning. It's just continuing to stick with what you're doing and stay committed to the outcome. Stay committed to just showing up every day. That's what I did. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd feel numb, and I'd go to the office and just do what I could do that day to move things forward and make it a little bit better for the next day. And that's what I just did. Every day, I'm going to be a little bit better, and I'm going to just do what I can today. And I'm going to try to win the day. If I could win the day, I could win the week. If I win the week, I could win the month. If I win the month, I could win the quarter. If I could win the quarter, I could win the year. And so that's what I just did every day, and still continue to do and try to do my best on every day now. So just want to encourage you, keep going. If you got any value from this episode, let me know. Repost. The way that I know to keep making these and taking, hours out of my life every month to make these episodes, whether just individually or with guests, is hearing from you guys that are listening and getting value. So if you did like this episode, I would love to hear from you as well. Or if you didn't even, that's cool too. Shoot me a DM on Instagram, Cody Barton Official, and let me know if you like more episodes where it's sharing these types of stories, or if you prefer just having the guests. I'm looking at making some adjustments to the way that I do these episodes to have more mix up of having, lessons learned and then mixed in with having other guests that, could bring great value to you guys as well. So that's kind of the thought process that I'm having there, is, mixing it up to be able to give value in a couple different ways here on the podcast. But with that being said, if you did get value, help your boy out. Freaking hit the button to like this. Hit the button to give me a star, a 5-star, wherever you're listening. Help me out and to continue reaching more people. So with that being said, we'll see you guys in the next episode.